What's up, guys? Welcome to the Tailgate. On this episode, we're going to be grilling some ribs and talking Week 11 football. Welcome to the Tailgate, guys. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Armando. I've been in the fantasy sports industry for several years now. You can find my work at footballdiehards.com. I'm the host of the Chalk Talk podcast, and I also run the 1 week season Twitter handle. We created the show to combine three of my passions: sports, grilling, and some craft beer. Each week, we'll be grilling a new recipe and naming our MVB, most valuable beer. This week's MVB is the 90-minute Imperial IPA. Cheers. Let's get to the lock of the week. The Kansas City Chiefs are heading into LA to take on the Rams. This should be a phenomenal game on Monday night, one I'm very excited to watch. The Chiefs are actually getting 3.5 points here, and they've been playing well all season long, and this is a chance where they can outright win this game. But being that they're on the road, they are getting points, so I'm going to go ahead and take them with the points because I think right now they are the better team. The Rams are dealing with some injuries. They just lost Cooper Kupp, who is a significant loss for this offense, so I'm expecting the Chiefs to go into LA and win outright. However, I'm going to be taking the 3.5 points that they're getting against Vegas, so let's get excited for this game on Monday night, guys. Let's head on over to the bargain bin. The first player I want to talk about this week is Sterling Shepard at 5,300 against the Tampa Bay Bucks. The matchup is phenomenal. The Buccaneers continue to be one of the worst defenses in the league, and even though last week we did not see a ton of volume for Shepard, he is still averaging 6.9 targets per game and has 14 red zone targets, second on the team at 24%. The Bucks are allowing the second most fantasy points per game. They've allowed a tied 15 reception touchdowns this season and have given up the 5th most receptions to opposing wideouts all season here. This is a great matchup for Sterling Shepard. I expect a bounce back game, and even though he didn't get a ton of volume last week, he did score a touchdown. So the red zone targets are there. The volume has been there pretty much all season long, and I expect a big game out of him at a very reasonable price. The next player I want to talk about this week is Golden Tate at 5,500 against the New Orleans Saints. The price is not super cheap. However, when you compare it to what has been all season long, it is very reasonable and very affordable. He didn't get quite as much volume and quite as much playing time as I expected in the first game with the Philadelphia Eagles after being traded from the Lions. But this is a week where he has another week under this offense, another week learning the playbook, and another week learning the offensive scheme here. I expect a big game out of him this week, especially in this game environment against the Saints, which should be very high scoring. When you look at the spread, the Eagles are underdog by 9 points, so they're going to be chasing points here. When you look at the Saints defense, they've allowed the most fantasy points per game, the most receiving yards, and are tied with the Bucks for most receiving touchdowns to opposing wideouts this season. This sets up to be a great matchup. And when you look at his one-on-one matchup against PJ Williams, who grades out to be one of the worst corners in the league, this is a very good matchup. Golden Tate has a 36% advantage rating, second highest of this week according to Pro Football Focus. Alright guys, the last guy I want to talk about, Dion Lewis. He let us down last week, but I'm expecting a bounce back game this week, and he still remains very cheap. Alright, Derrick Henry outperformed them last week, I get it, but Dion Lewis still plays 75% of the snaps and received over 20 touches for the second straight week. This is a good matchup against a Colts defense that has allowed the second most receptions, 4th most receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns to opposing backs while allowing 25 DraftKings points per game. The game environment should be a favorable one for him this week, and I expect another high volume game with much more efficiency. At the end of the day, he faced the Patriots last week, which was a pretty good matchup, but that's his former team. So New England planned very well to make sure that they kept Dion Lewis from having a big game, and they were successful at that. Lewis will bounce back this week, and I think his poor performance last week might reduce the ownership. So go ahead, let's get back on board and go with Dion Lewis.
Chalk Talk time.
Ezekiel Elliott at 8,500 against the Falcons to me is a phenomenal chalk play this week. When you look at the Falcons defense, they've allowed the most DraftKings points per game, the most receptions, second most receiving yards, and second most receiving touchdowns to opposing running backs. Zeke Elliott is averaging 5.3 targets per game and continues to see a high usage on this offense. This is going to be a good game environment here for him because even if they're trailing like they're expected to against Atlanta, he should see a ton of usage, especially in the passing game. Atlanta loves to give those short intermediate passes to opposing running backs, opposing players, so this is a phenomenal matchup. Eat that chalk this week, guys. Eat it. Julio Jones at 8,500 against the Dallas Cowboys is expected to be pretty popular this week according to Fantasy Labs. Listen, Julio Jones has played very, very well in the last 2 weeks, scoring over 26 DraftKings points and finding the end zone in each of those games. This week, however, he does draw a tough matchup against Byron Jones, who has been a shutdown corner all season and is becoming one of the best corners in the NFL. This is a week where I'm going to go ahead, fade Jones because of the matchup, even though he's an elite wide receiver that can outproduce his salary against any corner. This is a week I'm going to go ahead and take my chances with someone else and fade the chalk here with Julio Jones. Alright folks, if you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe below, tell a friend, follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Good luck to everyone this weekend, and I'll see you next week.
Scrumptious.